stalemate is a situation in the game of chess where the player whose turn it is to move is not in check but has no legal move. The rules of chess provide that when stalemate occurs, the game ends as a draw. During the endgame, stalemate is a resource that can enable the player with the inferior position to draw the game rather than lose. In more complicated positions, stalemate is much rarer, usually taking the form of a swindle that succeeds only if the superior side is inattentive. Stalemate is also a common theme in endgame studies and other chess problems. The outcome of a stalemate was standardized as a draw in the 19th century. Before this standardization, its treatment varied widely, including being deemed a win for the stalemating player, a half win for that player, or a loss for that player. Not being permitted, and resulting in the stalemated player missing a turn. Some regional chess variants have not allowed a player to play a stalemating move. In different versions of losing chess, another chess variant, stalemate may or may not be treated as a draw. In popular usage, the word stalemate refers to a conflict that has reached an impasse, and in which resolution or further action seems highly difficult or unlikely. Simple examples. With black to move, black is stalemated in diagrams 1 to 5. Stalemate is an important factor in the endgame. The endgame setup in diagram 1, for example, quite frequently is relevant in play. The position in diagram 1 occurred in an 1898 game between Amos Byrne and Harry Pillsbury and also in a 1925 game between Saverly Tartakoa and Richard Ra. Copyright E. The same position, except shifted to the E file, occurred in a 2009 game between Gato Kamsky and Vladimir Kramnik. The position in diagram 4 is an example of a pawn drawing against a queen. Stalemates of this sort can often save a player from losing an apparently hopeless position. In that position, even if it were white's move, there is no way to avoid this stalemate without allowing black's pawn to promote. In diagram 5, black had forced the position to become stalemate, seeing that the white bishop could not force the black king to go away from the queening square of the rook pawn. Stalemate in the endgame, as the previous section suggests, stalemate is a typical element of the endgame, often enabling the player with the inferior position to draw the game. Concerning chess, below are some examples of this from actual play. Anand vs Kramnik equals. In this game between Viswanathan Anand and Vladimir Kramnik from the 2007 World Chess Championship, black must capture the pawn on f5, causing stalemate. Korchnoi vs Karpov equals. An intentional stalemate occurred on the 124th move of the fifth game of the 1978 World Championship match between Anatoly Karpov and Viktor Korchnoi. The game had been a theoretical draw for many moves. However, the players were not on speaking terms, so neither would offer a draw by agreement. Korchnoi said that it gave him pleasure to stalemate Karpov and that it was slightly humiliating. Bernstein vs Smyslov equals. Sometimes a surprise stalemate saves a game. In the game between Osip Bernstein and Vasily Smyslov, black should win by sacrificing the f-pawn and using the king to support the b-pawn. However, Smyslov thought it was good to advance the b-pawn, because of the skewer of the rook if it captures the pawn once it is on b2. Play went, 1. b2. 2. rx b2. Now f2. rh2 plus 3. kf3. rxb2 is stalemate. Smyslov moved 2. kg4 and the game was drawn after 3. kf1. Mathulevia vs Minev equals. In the Bernstein-Smyslov game, the possibility of stalemate arose because of a blunder. It can arise without one, as in the game Milan Mathulevia vs Nikolay Minev. Play continued, 1. rc6 kg5, 2. kh3 kh5, 3. f4, the only meaningful attempt to make progress. Now all black moves lose, with one exception. 3. rxa6. And now 4 rxa6 would be stalemate. White played 4. rc5 plus instead and the game was drawn several moves later. Williams vs Haaretz equals. In the game between Elijah Williams and Daniel Haaretz, Black was up a knight and a pawn in an endgame. This would normally be a decisive material advantage, but Black could find no way to make progress because of various stalemate resources available to White. The game continued, 72. Ra8 73. Rc1 K3, avoiding the threatened 73. Nc2 plus. 74. Rc4 Ra4 75. Rc1 Kd2 76. Rc4 Kd3, 76. Nc2 plus 77 or Xc2 plus. Kxc2 is stalemate. 77. Rc3 plus. Kd4, 77. Kxc3 is stalemate. 78. Rc1 Ra3 79. Rd1 plus Kc5, 79. Rd3 80 or Xd3 plus. Leaves Black with insufficient material to win after 80. Nxd3 81 Kxa2, or a standard fortress in a corner draw after 80. Kxd3. 80. Rc1 plus Kb5 81. Rc7 Nd5 82. Rc2 Nc3. 83. Rb2 plus Kc4 84. Rb3. Now the players agreed to a draw, since 84. Kxb3 or 84. Rxb3 is stalemate, as is 84. Ra8 85 or Xc3 plus. Kxc3. Black could still win the game until his critical mistake 82. Nc3. Instead, 82. Nb4 wins a euro, for example, 83 Rc8 Re3 84 Rb8 plus Kc5 85 Rc8 plus Kd5 86 Rd8 plus Kc6 87 Ra8 Re1 plus 88 Kb2 Kc5 89 Kc3 A1 equals Q and wins. Equals Carlsen vs Van Welle equals. This 2007 game between Magnus Carlsen and Loke Van Welle ended in stalemate. 16-year-old Carlsen had adroitly used the second-rank defense in a rook and bishop versus rook endgame for 46 moves. The 50-move rule was about to come into effect, under which Carlsen could claim a draw. The game ended with 109. Rc2 a euro d2 plus bx d2, stalemate. More complicated examples. Stalemate can also occur with more pieces on the board. Outside of relatively simple endgame positions, such as those above, stalemate occurs rarely, usually when the side with the superior position has overlooked the possibility of stalemate. This is typically realized by the inferior side's sacrifice of one or more pieces in order to force stalemate. A piece that is offered as a sacrifice to bring about stalemate is sometimes called a desperado. Evans vs Reshevsky equals. One of the best-known examples of the desperado is a game by Larry Evans vs Reshevsky, which was dubbed the swindle of the century. Evans sacrificed his queen on move 49 and offered his rook on move 50. White's rook has been called the eternal rook. Capturing it results in stalemate, but otherwise it stays on the 7th rank and checks Black's king ad infinitum. The game would inevitably end in a draw by agreement, by threefold repetition, or by an eventual claim under the 50-move rule. 47. H4. Re2 plus 48. Kh1 Qxg3. After 48. Qg6. 49 or F8 Key 6. 50 or H8 plus Kg6, Black remains a piece ahead after 51 Qxe6 and Xe6, or forces mate after 51 Gxf4 Re1 plus and 52. Qa2 plus. 49. Qg8 plus. Kxg8 50. Rxg7 plus. Equals Gelfand vs Kramnik equals, the position at right occurred in Gelfand Euro Kramnik, FIDE candidates match, Game 6, Sangi Nagar 1994. Kramnik, down 2 pawns and on the defensive, would be very happy with a draw. Gelfand has just played 67. Re4 a euro e7. A strong-looking move that threatens 68 Qxf6, winning a third pawn, or 68 rc7, further constricting Black. Black responded 67. QC1. If white takes black's undefended rook with 68 qxd8, black's desperado queen forces the draw with 68. QH1 plus 69 kg3 QH2 plus. Compelling 70 kxh2 stalemate. If white avoids the stalemate with 68 rxg7 plus kxg7 69 qxd8, black draws by perpetual check with 69. QH1 plus 70 kg3 QG1 plus 71 kf4 QC1 plus 72 k4 QC6 plus 73 kd3 QXF3 plus 74 kd2 QG2 plus 75 kc3 QC6 plus 76 kb4 QB5 plus 77 K3 QD3 plus. Gelfand played 68. D5 instead, but still only drew. Troitsky vs Vogt in Troitsky or Euro Vogt, 1896, the famous endgame study composer pulled off an elegant swindle in actual play. After Troitsky's 1. D1. Black fell into the trap with the seemingly crashing 1. Bh3. Threatening 2. Qg2. The game concluded 2. Rxd8 plus Kxd8 3. Qd1 plus. Qxd1 stalemate. White's bishop, knight, and f-pawn are all pinned and unable to move. Stalemate in studies. Stalemate is a frequent theme in endgame studies and other chess compositions. An example is the white to play and draw study at right, which was composed by the American master Frederick Rhine in 2005 and published in 2006. White saves a draw with 1 e5 plus. Black wins after 1 nb4 plus. kb5. Or 1 k8 plus. bx e8 2 e5 plus kb5. 3 rxb2 plus nb3. 1. bx e5 after 1. kb5. 2 rxb2 plus nb3 3 rxc4. qx e3 4 rxb3 plus. qxb3 5 qh1. bf5 plus 6 kd8. White is winning. 2. k8 plus. 2 qx e5. qb7 plus 3 kd8 qd7. 2. bx e8 3. rh6 plus bd6 3. kb5 4 rxb6 plus kxb6 5 nxc4 plus also leads to a drawn endgame. Not 5 rxb2 plus. bxb2 6 nc4 plus kb5 7 nxb2 bh5. Trapping white's knight. 4. rxd6 plus. kxd6 5. nxc4 plus. nxc4 6. rxb6 plus nxb6 plus. Moving the king is actually a better try, but the resulting endgame of 2 knights and a bishop against a rook is a well-established theoretical draw. 7. kd8. Black is 3 pieces ahead, but if white is allowed to take the bishop, the 2 knights are insufficient to force checkmate. The only way to save the bishop is to move it, resulting in stalemate. A similar idea occasionally enables the inferior side to save a draw in the ending of bishop, knight, and king versus lone king. At Right is a composition by A. J. Rowcroft which was published in the British Chess magazine in 1957. White draws with 1. c7. After which there are 2 main lines, 1. f5 2. c8 equals qbc3 3. qxf5 plus draws by stalemate. 1. g5 2. c8 equals r. car1 3. rc2. bc4 4. rc1 plus car2 5. ra1 plus kb3 6. ra3 plus kc2 7. rc3 plus kd2 8. rc2 plus. As in Ivantsar Reshevsky, black cannot escape the eternal rook. Stalemate in problems. Some chess problems require white to move and stalemate black in n moves. Problemists have also tried to construct the shortest possible game ending in stalemate. Sam Lloyd devised one just 10 moves long, 1E3A52QH5 Ra63QXA5H54QXE7 Ra65H4F66QXD7 plus KF77QXB7QD38QXB8Q7 9QXE8KG610 A similar stalemate is reached after 1D4C52DXC5F63QXD7 plus KF7-4QXD8B F56QXA8RH67QXA6BH7 Lloyd also demonstrated that stalemate can occur with all the pieces on the board, 1D4D6-2QD2E5-3A4E4-4Q-F4F55H3B7-6QH2B6-7 Ra3C58RG3QA5 plus 9ND2BH410F3BB311D5E312C4F4. A variation of this game has even occurred in a tournament game. Double stalemate equals. There are peculiar chess compositions featuring double stalemate. At left and at right are double stalemate positions, in which neither side has a legal move. Such positions are not seen in practical play. There is also a bizarre chess variant, Pat-Scotch, that begins from a double stalemate position. The fastest known game ending in a double stalemate position was discovered by Enzo Minerva and published in the Italian newspaper L'Unità on August 14, 2007, 1C4D5-2QB3BH3F5-4QXB7KF7-5QXA7K-G6-6F3C57QXE7 or XA-2-8KF2 or XB2-9QXG7 plus KH5-10QXG8 or XB1-11 or XB1KH4-12QXH8H5-13QH6BXH6-14 or XB8B3 plus 15DXE3QXB8-16KG2QF417EXF4D418B3DXE3. History of the stalemate rule. The stalemate rule has had a convoluted history. Although today's stalemate is universally recognized as a draw, for much of the game's history that has not been the case. In the forerunners to modern chess, such as Chaturanga, stalemate was a win for the side administering it. This practice persisted in chess as played in early 15th century Spain. However, Lucena treated stalemate as an inferior form of victory, which in games played for money won only half the stake, and this continued to be the case in Spain as late as 1600. The rule in England from about 1600 to 1800 was that stalemate was a loss for the player administering it, a rule that the eminent chess historian H.J.R. Murray believes may have been adopted from Russian chess. That rule disappeared in England before 1820, being replaced by the French and Italian rule that a stalemate was a drawn game. Assume that black is stalemated. Throughout history, such a stalemate has at various times been a win for white in 10th century Arabia and parts of medieval Europe. A half win for white. In a game played for stakes, white would win half the stake. A win for black in 9th century India, 17th century Russia, on the central plain of Europe in the 17th century, and 17th–18th century England. This rule continued to be published in Hoyle's Games Improved as late as 1866. Not allowed. If white made a move that was stalemate black, he had to retract it and make a different move. Murray likewise wrote that in Hindustani chess and Parsi chess, two of the three principal forms of chess played in India as of 1913, a player was not allowed to play a move that would stalemate the opponent. The same was true of Burmese chess, another chess variant, at the time Murray wrote. Stalemate was not permitted in most of the Eastern Asiatic forms of the game until early in the 20th century. The forfeiture of black's turn to move, although other medieval French sources treat stalemate as a draw. A draw. This was the rule in 13th century Italy and also stated in the German Krakow poem, which noted however that some players treated stalemate as equivalent to checkmate. This rule was ultimately adopted throughout Europe, but not in England until the 19th century, after being introduced there by Jacob Surratt. Proposed rule change. Periodically, Writers have argued that stalemate should again be made a win for the side causing the stalemate. Grandmaster Larry Kaufman writes, "In my view, calling stalemate a draw is totally illogical, since it represents the ultimate zugzwang, where any move would get your king taken." The British master T.H. Tyler argued in a 1940 article in the British Chess magazine that the present rule, treating stalemate as a draw, is without historical foundation and irrational, and primarily responsible for a vast percentage of draws, and hence should be abolished. Years later, Fred Reinfeldt wrote, when Tyler wrote his attack on the stalemate rule, he released about his unhappy head a swarm of peevish maledictions that are still buzzing. Larry Evans calls the proposal to make stalemate a win for the stalemating player a crude proposal that would radically alter centuries of tradition and make chess boring. This rule change would cause a greater emphasis on material. An extra pawn would be a greater advantage than it is today. Effect on endgame theory if stalemate were a loss for the player unable to move, the outcome of some endgames would be affected. In some situations the superior side can force stalemate but not checkmate. In others, the defending player can use stalemate as a defensive technique to avoid losing. If the proposed rule change were made, both of these situations would become wins for the superior side instead of draws. The endgame of king and pawn versus king would always be a win unless the pawn can be captured. If the pawn cannot be captured or promoted, the defending king can be forced into a stalemate. Two knights and a king can stalemate a lone king, so that ending would no longer be a draw. A rook pawn plus a bishop on the color opposite the pawn's queening square would be a win instead of a draw, because the defending king can be forced into stalemate. A king and rook versus a king and bishop would be a win for the side with the rook because of a forced stalemate. If the defending king is cornered, a single bishop or knight may be able to stalemate the king, although these cannot be forced in general. The defensive drawing techniques with a bishop pawn or rook pawn on the 7th rank with its king nearby versus a queen would not work, because they rely on stalemate. Chess variants: in losing chess, stalemate is not necessarily a draw. Depending on the variant, stalemate can be a draw, or a win for either the player with fewer pieces or for the stalemated player. In xiangqi, a stalemated player loses. Stalemate is a metaphor. Stalemate has become a widely used metaphor for other situations where there is a conflict or contest between two parties, such as war or political negotiations, and neither side is able to achieve victory, resulting in what is also called an impasse or deadlock or Mexican standoff. Chess writers note that this usage is a misnomer since, unlike in chess, the situation is often a temporary one that is ultimately resolved, even if it seems currently intractable. See also, checkmate, chess terminology, desperado, draw, rules of chess, swindle. References, notes. Bibliography. External links: Edward Winter, Stalemate, Edward Winter, 5929. Stalemate, Jack O'Keefe, Stalemate. Stalemate. Game collection at chessgames.com, Spassky vs. Kurz, 1961, ended in stalemate, a defensive brilliancy, example of stalemate in politics.